Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the Film Room Podcast. This is episode 25. I am your host, Joe Baress, along with my co-host, Joby Fawcett. Joby, we're back. 25 straight weeks. What's going on?
Not too much, Joe. Listen, I am very impressed with you having such a pep in your step today after what has been a very busy couple of days for you, covering the intense District 2 Team Duels Wrestling Championships over the weekend. Tireless effort by you, Joey.
Joby, I greatly appreciate it. I learned from the best, of the of the tireless work ethic, and that is you, my friend. So,
Well, listen, those big events take a lot of patience, and they also take a great deal of endurance in terms of keeping track of everything that's going on and trying to deliver it in a coherent fashion. And you did an excellent job this weekend, Joe. I was riveted by your coverage.
I appreciate that, Joby. I was thinking of putting it in my home office in Wallenpaupack. What do you think?
Well, listen, that's always something you can do. One of the unique aspects of this job is you essentially are a remote office when you're carrying that magical laptop of yours. So
That's right. Exactly, Joby. So, all right. So right now, as we always do, we are joined by our Times-Tribune Athlete of the Week, Jordan Shaffer of Abington Heights basketball. Jordan, how we doing?
Doing great.
Hey, thanks so much for joining us. What Jordan did last week, he had 30 points, including 6 3-pointers in a win over Delaware Valley. He added 19 points and 3 3-pointers in a win over Scranton. He also added 16 points yesterday in a loss to Pocono Mountain West. But Jordan, obviously, the beginning of the season, you guys had a really tough schedule built in. Now you guys have been, it really seems like you're starting to gel. What has been the key recently for your guys' success?
I feel like the tough schedules to open up the year has really prepared us for what we see now. And I feel like over the past few weeks, we've really honed in on our defense. We're running new defensive schemes, and that has really thrown a couple teams off.
Jordan, it's Joby. How are you?
I'm doing great.
It's been a while since you and I have spoken. It was about 48 hours. So listen, you've had a terrific season so far. And for those who don't know, you and Robbie Lucas were key starters on last year's team that finished 26-1. And, this year, this program has gone through an enormous change with the retirement of Coach Ken Bianchi and assistant coach Jeff McLean, and the hiring of legend J.C. Shao, who is the all-time scorer there at Abington Heights. So I want to know from your perspective as a returning starter, how this team and this program has transitioned from the Hall of Famer, Coach Ken Bianchi, to J.C. Shao.
A lot of that credit goes out to Coach Shao. He's carried on a lot of the things that Coach Bianchi and Coach McLean instilled in us. And then a lot of that credit also goes out to Robbie, who he's been a 3-year starter now. And he's been a great leader who has helped us understand, and all the younger guys understand, how to win.
Absolutely. Let's talk about your role with the team. Obviously, you're a junior. How has your role changed with the team, and how are you enjoying it this year?
Well, I mean, last year we had a great group of guys. So going into this year, losing a couple of those guys, I've stepped into more of a scoring role and more of on the defensive end, I need to step up too. So I feel like Coach Shao really instilled confidence in me, and that really has helped me step into that bigger role.
Jordan, one of the things about this season, Abington Heights, you mentioned the very challenging non-league schedule, and there were some tough losses in what was the first half of the Lackawanna Division I schedule as well. That is not something that players at Abington Heights are very accustomed to, is losing in the division or even in the non-league schedule. So as one of the new leaders of this team, along with Robbie Lucas, how did you help this group maintain a positive attitude as you kind of had to navigate through a challenging schedule with guys who really haven't had to play at that level yet?
I think it's more about making sure all the newer guys coming into our team, I'm helping them understand like what we were playing this harder schedule for. Like, we knew that playing these tougher teams was going to prepare us for when we needed to win, which is right now. So to see that all come back and pay off now that's been huge.
Absolutely. Speaking of the right now, you guys have North Pocono tomorrow and I believe Scranton Prep on Friday. Obviously that's a big game. You lost the last time you played them. What do you have to do to win this time around?
We don't look past any game. So, we know every game is just as important as the next now because we can't lose anything. But, to beat North Pocono, we know we got to play physical. And to beat Prep on Friday, we feel like we're going to be more prepared than we were last game. So just the preparation part of it is going to be huge for us.
Jordan, let's talk a little bit about the experience you had last year being able to play with those three veteran players who really were the heart and soul of the program. Ryan Nealon, he had a great season last year, and Will Marion and Mason Fedor. They just really winning 26 games in a row before losing to Imhotep Charter. What kind of crazy ride was that for you as an underclassman, as a sophomore in your first season as a starter to enjoy that kind of success at that kind of level?
Just to be a part of that type of run was awesome. And they were a great group of guys, great leaders. I still stay in touch with all of them still. After games, they'll text me, they'll reach out to me, tell me good luck. So, but just to play with such a great group of guys and go on such a great run. And then obviously Robbie on that team too. Robbie's one of my closest friends. So just to be able to go on that ride with a bunch of guys that I've played with for a while now, it was awesome.
Absolutely. Jordan, do you have any plans for after high school yet? Do you know what you're going to aim at doing?
I plan to play. I want to play in college somewhere. I don't know where yet. And then I don't know after that.
Jordan, so I hope that people listening to this podcast had a chance to read the story I did on you and your family earlier this season. Your dad, Matt Shaffer, was an all-region basketball player at Western Wayne and went on to an outstanding collegiate career. He was a really big physical player who had a nice touch on his jumper, longtime PIAA official as well. And your mom, Nicole, was a outstanding basketball player at Scranton High School and also at the collegiate level. And I just wondered, we talked, of course, when we did that story about their influences on you. I just wondered if I could give you an opportunity to say how great it's been growing up in a basketball family and being able to kind of develop your game in what is the family's game.
Growing up in a basketball family, it was always it was something that was always there in our family. And it was always, it was never like it was always something we enjoyed as a family. Like we go and that's something we do for fun. And then now with two younger siblings, just as a whole family, being able to connect in that way through basketball and having my parents as coaches has also been a great thing for me.
Yeah, Jordan, what's kind of crazy is when I read Joby's feature on you is that Matt used to he was a coach at like Hoop City camps that I used to attend when I was in grade school. So it was kind of like a full circle moment for me. I'm getting old, but stay young when you can. But speaking of your family, Jordan, I saw in your Athlete of the Week interview. So I'm a big Lakers fan. Your brother is apparently a big Lakers fan. Yep. How are you a Celtics fan?
It's actually more impressive how my brother is a Lakers fan. Our whole family is Celtics fans. So how he ended up as a Lakers fan it's still a mystery.
We'll have to get him on the podcast and ask him. But so I want to ask you too, as a Celtics fan, how did you feel when you saw that the Lakers traded for Luka Doncic?
Oh, it was awful. Anytime you see the Lakers do anything good, that's just terrible feeling as a Celtics fan.
Yeah, listen, Jordan, you're in enemy territory here because while I'm not a huge NBA fan, I used to follow the Philadelphia 76ers in the 80s when they had a big rivalry with the Lakers. So, yeah, I'm not happy about this Lakers nonsense either.
Oh, God. And, it's honestly, it's our own fault that, the Celtics built this latest run here because we could have picked Jason Tatum. We could have picked, what's his face, Jaylen Brown, I think, but we went in opposite directions. Jordan, what do you think of this Boston Celtics team? Because I honestly, I don't know that anyone is stopping them this year either.
I think they are built as a perfect championship contender. They have great 3-point shooters and great defenders, and I think that's what you need to win in the NBA.
That's right, Jordan. And don't forget that Luka Doncic couldn't beat him last year. So,
Yep.
All of a sudden, everybody wants to fawn over Luka Doncic. He didn't win last year.
Come on, Joby. I was happy for a second, and now you're.
I know.
You're
you know how
I
am, Joe. Yeah.
Well, let's, Jordan, we're gonna have a Super Bowl. I know you're a Cincinnati Bengals fan, so probably a really disappointing.
Oh, Jordan, my goodness gracious, you're really not going to be happy that I'm a Rams fan.
That's terrible. That's terrible.
Jordan's loving his time on this podcast.
He really will.
So I'm just curious, as a sports fan, what do you think of, we obviously have a bunch of Eagles fans in the area. What do you think of this Super Bowl, and do you have a Super Bowl pick for us?
I mean, in Pennsylvania, I feel like you're inclined to root for the Eagles, and so that's why I'm rooting for the Chiefs.
I love it.
And I also think I just don't know how Pat Mahomes. I don't know how they can stop him. So right. I got the Chiefs by 20.
Yeah, well,
by 20.
I love it. You can't bet against the Chiefs, right? You just can't until they lose. So,
well, I'll tell you, it takes a strong-willed man to root against the Chiefs, or at the very least pick them by less than 20, I guess. Wow.
I love it. But all right, I think that's all I have. Joby, you have anything else for Jordan?
I don't, Jordan. Listen, again, one part of my responsibility here is to certainly congratulate you on what was a fantastic week. I got a chance to catch you guys in that game on Friday against Scranton in the Coaches versus Cancer game. It was really emotional, even for me, being there. You kind of see the great stories and everything. And I know you guys played inspired basketball in what was a terrific win for you, and now have a chance to challenge for first place in the division. And you've been playing terrific basketball for the last couple of weeks here. So congratulations. Good luck this week against North Pocono, and I'll probably see you again on Friday.
Thank you.
Thanks, Jordan. Take care.
Thank you, guys.
All right. That was Jordan Shaffer, our Times-Tribune Athlete of the Week, brought to you by the Lehigh Valley Orthopedic Institute. Joby, it's just crazy. I mean, I think I talked about it on a podcast. I don't know if it was last episode or the episode before that, but it's crazy to have Jordan Shaffer on this podcast, and considering that Matt Shaffer, like you said, used to officiate my games when I was younger, ended up being a coach at my basketball camp at Hoop City way back in the day when I was in grade school. It's I'm sure you've obviously had more of those moments than I have, but it's very interesting getting those full circle moments.
It really is, Joe. And look, as you said, mine are piling up, but it was a neat opportunity for me when I got a chance to speak with Jordan and his parents, because back when his parents were playing and they were both selected all region is when I started my career at the Times-Tribune as a clerk. I took a lot of the scores back then over the phone when we used to do the old call-ins of the box scores. And that's how I kind of got familiar with Matt and his wife, Nicole, who was an outstanding scorer for Scranton High School. And then the following year, I started covering boys basketball. But I remember how talented both those players were when they were in high school, and to have a chance to chat with them and knowing that their son now is playing and excelling at Abington Heights High School. It's pretty cool for me, but it does certainly put into perspective how long I've been doing this. So,
exactly. Yeah. So it's kind of like a perfect full circle moment for you.
Yeah, it's really, and look, I guess, we're getting more and more of these dads who I covered. Last week, I think we spoke with Sophia Toludo from Dunmore, and her dad I played against in high school.
Right. So, right. Exactly.
It's certainly been a long career for me, and I've got I've made such great relationships through the years, Joe, and I got to meet Matt very early on, obviously. And so it was neat to kind of write that story this year. And I was very, very happy with the way that one came out.
Absolutely. I love the story, Joby. It's really cool to see that family still producing big time basketball talent.
Yeah.
So, Joby, we did have some other strong performances from last week. Obviously, one of them was the opponent that Abington Heights will be facing on Friday, who's, a team that's really playing well. Packy Doherty scored 23 points, including 4 3-pointers in a 78-58 win over Executive Education. That's a nice win for them. He had 14 points in a win over North Pocono and 9 in a win over Scranton. Brayden Rose from Riverside Basketball scored 12 points in a win over Mid-Valley and 30 in a win over Dunmore. And also CJ Thompson from Holy Cross scored 20 points in a win over Old Fords and 17 in a win over Mid-Valley. So there's some more boys performances. Joby, let's take a look at the top 10. And I guess I think maybe the biggest thing, if you correct me if I'm wrong, but Scranton Prep moves up to number 3 after a really nice week for them. Riverside remained at number 1, Holy Cross 2, Old Forge drops down to 4, Abington Heights is 5, Valley View 6, Delaware Valley 7, Scranton 8, falls to 8, Elk Lake 9, and Dunmore 10. Joby, you want to break it down a little bit?
Well, I don't want to get too technical with things that are going on, Joe, but I do want to point this out. We're 2 weeks away from the end of the regular season, okay?
Yes.
And, with 4 games to play in boys basketball in the regular season, we have the tie in Division II between number 1 Riverside and number 2 Holy Cross. If those 2 teams obviously finish out the way that we expect them to finish out, there are some challenging games yet ahead for both teams. I expect a playoff for that division championship somewhere down the road.
Sure.
Okay. Scranton Prep, you mentioned Packy Doherty. He had a big week last week. We know Bryson Martin had a big week last week following off of his Athlete of the Week performance the week before. And Scranton Prep has kind of claimed that top spot coming into the season. What was funny is, as I look back upon it, Joe, so Scranton Prep was the preseason favorite in Division I, okay?
Right.
And kind of really just got out of the blocks so slowly. And there's a couple of different factors for that. One, it was a very upgraded non-league schedule for Scranton this year, and had the tough draw in the Lineup tournament with Holy Cross in the semifinals. So, a couple of factors there, trying to kind of incorporate some different starters into the lineup and try to mix and match with your substitutions there. Larry Regan doing a great job with that group. And if you remember correctly, Joe, last year Scranton Prep didn't get really on track until the state playoffs, really, and got all the way to the semifinals in Class 4A. Now playing much better, obviously, right now scoring more than 70 points almost every time that they play, which is an impressive thing. I got a chance to see them live against Scranton early last week, and that race car mentality, it takes me back to, Joe, a time at Bishop Hannan with the late Paul Johnson. Bishop Hannan had some tough games during the course of the regular season, and late in the year, for whatever reason, he decided to implement this kind of up-tempo style that he didn't think teams would be able to keep up with his starting group. And he generated such a fast pace that teams just couldn't keep up with them. And Hannan went all the way to the state final that year. And it was a surprising run to the state final. But I see there's some parallel to what Larry Regan is doing with this group here. Even though he has the big man in the middle, Ambrose Rossi, he finds that getting out and running at every opportunity, on every missed shot, every turnover, or every, defensive rebound, he has this team racing down the court, a la Loyola Marymount back in the day. And I know that may date me a little bit, but I think you being a basketball.
I understood the reference though. So.
Right. Yeah. I think you would. So it certainly has benefited Scranton Prep to this point in getting on this hot winning streak and kind of moving back into the control of its destiny here in Division One. Also, Joe, we have two teams battling out in Division 3 with Elk Lake, you mentioned at number 9, and Mountain View, which was able to win a very tight overtime battle with Lackawanna Trail last week. And that allowed Mountain View to stay within one game of Elk Lake in the Division 3 standings. So those two teams will play Tuesday night as part of the Lackawanna League schedule for boys basketball. If Mountain View is able to somehow pull off an upset there, we'll have a tie in that top of that division too. And then, of course, later on in the week, if Scranton Prep and Abington Heights are able to take care of business on Tuesday, Joe, and you know Scranton Prep's got a tough game with Valley View.
Yes.
Those two teams will be battling for first, maybe sharing first place. So, look, it's going to be a very exciting week here ahead of what will be the final week in the regular season with a lot of good head-to-head battles. We had kind of this similar scenario take place in the first half of the schedule, but that clearly is just in the midway point. Now we're getting toward the end of the season here, and teams are kind of finding which direction they want to go. They want to build some momentum for what they hope will be some deep postseason runs as well.
Absolutely. Joby, fun fact about that Hannan team. If you rewatch that state final game, you'll see me keeping stats on the bench. So
is that right, Joe?
I was on that team. Yeah, I was.
Were you a freshman that year?
I was a sophomore. Actually.
Sophomore, yeah. Okay,
yep.
yeah.
And I wasn't on the team, but I was the stat boy.
Okay, but having been at practice, do you remember when Coach Johnson made that decision to kind of dial up the high octane offense?
You know, it's where I would say it happened. I don't remember exactly, but there was we honestly may have talked about this, me or you may have talked about, we had a scrimmage against Scranton that year toward the end of the season, and Scranton absolutely annihilated us.
By the way, no offense, Joe, that Scranton team was outstanding.
Really good team. And that's really, it's interesting. You know, obviously, sometimes losses can be helpful, and that scrimmage that didn't matter for anything was the thing that really pushed that team was different after that day. And I think that, Coach Paul Johnson, he knew exactly what he needed to do after that. And yeah, that team took off. Absolutely great team, absolutely great guys to be around. And the thing is, you mentioned the practices. Those guys, they treated, obviously those seniors at the time, Chris Osborne, Justin Carney, even guys like Jared Fabricator, Steve Russo, Adam Joyce, like everyone.
I remember them well, Joe.
Right. I mean, those guys were the real leaders. They really helped create a great culture where, the practices were intense, obviously. And there was always a level of respect for everybody, even a sophomore like me who was, who kept stats for the varsity game. There was always a place for everybody. They made you feel a part of every moment. And obviously, how, the depth of that bench. I mentioned some of them, but you got Joe Gibbons, that's about 8th, 9th, 10th man there. Great player, obviously an assistant at Keystone now. But yeah, it was, I think in short, that was the moment. I think that we saw how good Scranton was playing against them, and we just shot up from there.
Yeah, I remember that team was a lot of fun to cover, Joe. Anytime you can make a deep run into the state playoffs, and of course you went all the way to the state final that year, it's a lot of fun. And, if I may, I had such respect for Coach Paul Johnson.
Yeah.
When he took over for John Bucci midseason, he just, he was a very intense guy.
Yeah.
He knew his basketball. I think, but moreover, he really got players to elevate themselves to a higher level under his guidance and his tutelage. And I always enjoyed being in Coach Johnson's company. And if I may, I used to give out what we called the Paul Johnson Best Dressed Award.
Yeah.
I may have to revive that this year, but he was always dressed to the nines on the sideline. And boy, what a great guy, gone far too soon, taken far too soon. And he never would have even known he had anything going on physically. He was such an imposing figure on the sideline. Yes. He looked like a linebacker coaching basketball, but he certainly was taken tragically from us much too soon in his life. And just, I enjoyed his company for sure.
I mean, you said it perfectly. Speaking for someone who played for him, first of all, it always made me laugh because people always said, oh yeah, but Paul, he's such this classy guy. He never yells on the sideline. And I wanted to be like, well, first of all, he was a very classy guy. I want to be clear about that. And I'd be like, you were never out of practice, but he knew what he was doing. He came up with some great schemes. I think, you'll probably remember this too, but I believe the following year, when obviously we lost that great senior class, Old Forge was absolutely excellent, and I believe undefeated going into districts. And we played them at districts, and Coach Johnson incorporated a kind of a stall offense to kind of slow Old Forge down, and it worked for actually a really long time. Old Forge eventually wins the game, but that was a very close game against a very, very good Old Forge team. And that goes to show you, up tempo one year and you adjust to the team, and we slow them down the next year. And I quickly also want to say that he was an extremely, extremely nice person. As he would, it's funny. He would shop when I worked at the deli, he would shop at Garrity's, and he would always take time to, talk to me. And I remember there was one time I couldn't hear him, and he was just like, Joe. And he's like, he ends up screaming my name. And I turn around, I'm like, oh, my bad. And he's just like, hey, Merry Christmas. And then he just walked away.
Yeah.
He's just the kind of guy that wants, he was a nice guy. He was a funny guy. And you're right. He knew how to get what he needed out of his players. And yes, you said it earlier, but gone far, far too soon.
Yes.
But okay. So we went over the boys. Let's take a look at the girls. We actually have a few. By the time you listen to this podcast, these games will be over, but be sure to, take a look, go to our website, because Scott Walsh is at a key matchup in girls basketball. He ended up going out to Elk Lake for their matchup against Mountain View in a Division III clash. Elk Lake beat Mountain View the first time around. Also, Sam Freeman is at a Dunmore at Mid-Valley, a top 10 battle there as well. So we'll have a lot of coverage for you in girls basketball for Monday, as this is recording on Monday. But to look at the top 10, we've got Scranton Prep at 1, obviously. We also, Scranton Prep did suffer their first loss, but against a very, very good program that will obviously help them down the road.
Yeah, Joe, we've kind of built off this theme. You play these non-league games, and Blair Academy,
yes,
ranked in the top 5 in the state in Northern New Jersey, regardless of classification. So,
right.
And listen, that's a great job by Coach Bob Baviglia in the athletic office there. If you remember last year, Joe, Scranton Prep girls got off to a kind of rocky start to the season, and people were kind of like raising their eyebrows.
Yeah.
Because of the tough schedule that the girls played. Sometimes we forget that there's good basketball everywhere. And that tough non-league schedule that Scranton Prep played last year certainly served that team well as it went all the way to the state final in Class 4A.
Exactly. So, and they are actually, again, these are Monday night's games, but they're actually in a nice clash with Valley View tonight, a 1 versus 3 matchup.
Joe, and how about that nice? Now, we talk about the rivalry on the boys' side so much between Valley View and Scranton Prep, but don't forget that those two teams played in the District 2 championship game last year in Class 4A as well. Both teams won clearly Scranton Prep did by going to the final, but Valley View also won a state first round game last year. And already this year, Scranton Prep has a win over Valley View, but that's what, 3, 4, this will be the 5th time they've played.
Yeah.
With the goal of playing a 6th time later on. So we'll see how that plays out.
Exactly. Dunmore is the number 2 team. They keep chugging along. Elk Lake is 4. Again, that's that matchup tonight. Elk Lake, Mountain View. Mountain View is 7. Honesdale is 5. Scranton 6. North Pocono 8. Abington Heights 9, and Mid Valley 10. Joby, anything for the girls?
Quickly, Dunmore 90 straight league wins.
Right.
Clearly that's incredible.
Yeah.
We talked when we had Sophia Toledo on about the tradition there at Dunmore. It started with Ross Machaco, went to Ben O'Brien, and then now to Carrie Toomey. But to have that kind of longevity, it's just incredible. And we don't know the outcome of the game yet because Mid Valley and Dunmore are going to play on Monday night, and we're just recording this now. But regardless of how that turns out, Dunmore is just incredible, just an incredible program year after year, and for such a small school to be able to have that kind of success on a every year basis is an incredible testament to the hard work that this borough and this youth program that Dunmore started all the way down to the elementary level to feed this program. And just to give you a quick example, Joe, I don't want to get too far off on a tangent, but what a great story Mariah Murray has been with Penn State women.
Yeah.
That team is having some great success, had some dramatic wins last week, and she's been a real cog there at Penn State. And we know that Sierra Toomey's playing at University of North Carolina. So, those are 2 great kind of reflections of what this program has been here locally the last couple of years. And just to kind of mention, Joe, we kind of glossed over it there, but I guess Scotty Walsh is going to be up there.
That's right.
Took the drive up to Elk Lake, which is not an easy thing to do in the winter, Joe, with all the deer.
No, seriously.
But I'm sure we'll hear some sort of a panic story out of Scotty on his way back from Dimmock. But listen, those 2 teams, Elk Lake and Mountain View, are 2 very talented teams. And I want to say that both are in Class 2A, Joe, in District 2. Now, the reason I bring that up is Mountain View was in Single A last year and went to the state final. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Now I'm going to bump up a class to Class 2A. But if you remember last year, Joe, Holy Cross, your alma mater,
that's right,
inspired to play well at the end of the year for retiring Hall of Fame coach Barry Fitzgerald, got rolling and won the District 2 Class 2A championship. And Joe, I don't want to say that I'm 100% correct on this because I may be wrong, but I think Holy Cross won a game in the state playoffs last year in Class 2A and almost pulled off a second round upset, if I'm not mistaken.
Yes. Well, you're absolutely right.
The reason I bring that up is I really feel that both Elk Lake and Mountain View, should they, I believe 2 automatically go to the state tournament, I think both could possibly have an impact on the state level, even in Class 2A.
Right. So this is, so it's a very intriguing matchup. I'll be interested to see how that one plays out. I did have some stats from some girls as well, some solid performances. Again, still looking for a sponsor for the Natalie Goldstein stat reading, but out of Honesdale, she had 18 points in wins over Lakeland and Western Wayne last week. Krista Cortazar, Mid-Valley, she had 29 points in a win over Riverside and 20 in a win over Holy Cross. And speaking of prep, again, Bella Denham had 16 points in the loss to Blair Academy, 10 in a win over North Pocono, and 17 in a win over Scranton. And also Jenna Hillebrand, 12 in a loss to Blair Academy, 17 in a win over North Pocono, and 22 in a win over Scranton. So that's just some of the performances from last week. Joby, anything else we need to touch on basketball-wise before we move on?
No, I think just that, make sure you're following the Times-Tribune.com. We're going to have all the results from the Monday night games there up and posted Monday night, and certainly you can get them early Tuesday morning. You can always go to the Varsity 570 website for the box scores and statistics. And again, I'll be posting at some point, probably tomorrow, the District 2 updated standings after Monday night's games. I have the boys' District 2 standings already done and posted online at the Times-Tribune.com.
Yeah, Joby, you're doing a great job keeping people informed about those things in our new working situations. And you obviously also have put out some great videos weekly from the events you're covering. I still don't understand how you do the basketball videos, but they're fantastic. So
I'll have to show you sometime, Joe. I had a chuckle because our young colleague, Sam Freeman, found it quite astonishing how I was able to get video and cover the game at the same time. Nice. And I do tend to have fans who are sitting next to me in the stands marvel at how quickly I'm able to do it. But it is not a science that I would recommend anyone do.
It's fair. That's fair. Hey, that's why they pay you the medium bucks, So
that's correct, Joe.
But so let's move on to, obviously, Joby, there was some wrestling last week, and there's going to be...
Joe, you did a great job. You mentioned the film. The video highlights are tremendous. I'm sure those kids appreciate that. You got the great team photo of Wallenpaupack. And again, I don't want to belabor this or certainly beat it into the ground, but it is a difficult assignment to kind of give up your entire Saturday traveling up to Wallenpaupack, and you're covering all the events and you're covering all the matches. You early on in the week, you and Tom Fox kind of tag teamed the tournament, and I thought both of you did a fantastic job. The sport is certainly booming here locally, and when you get to this point, and you've been talking about it too, Joe, with how outstanding these teams are, and I believe, if I'm not mistaken, because I was following you, we had an all-Lackawanna League finals.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, again, I'm glad you bring that up. It just shows how great the Lackawanna League has been. Obviously District 2 as a whole has been improving, but especially the Lackawanna League. I mean, Honesdale you've talked about it. I mean, they've had a great culture there, obviously, for years. I mean, they've made states 5 of the last 9 seasons, and they're excellent from top to bottom. Wallenpaupack capturing, which is hard. It's kind of hard to believe, but their first district duels title, considering, from what I've seen from the Wallenpaupack program since I've been covering.
You got to remember, though, Joe, Delaware Valley was a dynasty there.
That's a good point. And, for this Wallenpaupack team, first of all, Steve Krishnowski, a great coach up there at Paupack, awesome guy. He talked about it, and it's culture, and they've built a great culture at Wallenpaupack. They've built a great program, and it starts with the youth, and you could see that. And again, these teams, top to bottom, when you talk about Wallenpaupack and Honesdale, they just don't have weaknesses, and they just once again came out and proved that they were the 2 best teams in the district, and it wasn't particularly close.
No, but you had some exciting semifinal matches, Joe.
Right.
Not just between Wallenpaupack and Honesdale, which were 2 of the dominant programs, but I mean, Delaware Valley fought its way all the way into the final, and Western Wayne, I think both of them were 6 or 7 seeds in their tournaments, right?
Yeah, to speak about, Delaware Valley, obviously you had mentioned Delaware Valley is just the power. And even in this year, which was supposed to be a down year, using air quotes, they end up rallying and reaching the district duels final. This obviously Lou DeLauro, great coach up there at Delaware Valley. And, they just got better and better as the year went on. You could kind of see it brewing. They only lost to West Scranton by a point during the season. They beat Abington Heights by 6. This was just an excellent team that really bought into that DV culture. I was talking to Lou DeLauro about it on Saturday, and he made a funny statement of just like, they're constantly in the room. I wish they would leave sometimes, but they're so dedicated to being the best that they could be, and that speaks to culture. Unfortunately, a lot of teams, I don't know if it's a recency bias, but Joby, unfortunately, a lot of teams were kind of banged up, so they could all use this couple week rest before individual tournaments. You saw guys kind of like with wrapped knees, wrapped arms, and just kind of trying to make it to the finish line of this duels tournament. Abington was a solid team all year. They were kind of banged up, but again, they battled whoever they were, whether they were going against, whether they were overmatched, whether they were anything. I mean, you could see the heart of that Abington Heights team, and they started that match off great against Wallen-Paupack. They went blow for blow with Paupack in the beginning of that match, and the final score didn't represent how close that match actually was to start. With a guy like Frank Scalpi, a junior heavyweight. Well, 215 is really his weight, but he goes up to 285 to take on a strong wrestler in George Rafferty, and George Rafferty is able to get a reversal, with seconds left in the match and win that match. But, it's really impressive to see the improvement of, like you said, these Lackawanna League teams through the years, and the culture that's being built in these programs. You could see it from top to bottom, even the guys that don't always see the map. And you mentioned Western Wayne coming out of that bracket as the 6th seed. They were 0-3 in Division 2, in the Lackawanna League Division 2. So, to come from the bottom there and to rally together and reach the finals, that's very impressive. Josh Harrison doing a nice job out there trying to balance coaching the boys and the girls, which is really impressive. So, yeah, like you said, it's really impressive by the Lackawanna League. I won't get into the power rankings because I wrote about it, and
it was a good, very, very comprehensive column, Joe.
I appreciate that. Thank you, Joby. So I won't get that. If you guys want to read it, go for it. But I've said everything that I want to say about the power ranking system. And yeah, so now we're looking at obviously a Wallen-Paupack team and a Honesdale team going into, which is unfortunately the next thing I want to speak of. No, the team duels tournament will not be at Hershey. It starts tomorrow, and there will be host sites for first round matches. So whoever's on the top of the bracket in each matchup, that's who is hosting. It's cool that Wallen-Paupack gets to host a first round match with a District 11 powerhouse Nazareth and District 3 4th place finisher Boiling Springs. But, both coaches, Steve Krasnowski and Ryan Chalada out of Honesdale, were pretty disappointed that the tournament was not at the Giant Center this year for multiple reasons. Number one, they both said it. They almost said the same thing. It's, Pennsylvania is, wrestling is Pennsylvania, and there should be, they should have that stage. It's great for the kids. So This year it'll be at Altoona High School. Once they reach the quarterfinals, that's where everyone will wrestle in Class 3A and 2A. Unfortunately, in Hershey, after the first round matches, if you lose in the first round, you go to the consolation bracket. If you lose in the first round now, you're out of the tournament. So where that's a little disappointing. Now, I don't want to get ahead of myself because, as you always say, Joby, that's why they wrestle the matches.
That's correct.
But, it's going to be a tall task for a Wallenpaupack to most likely face Nazareth District 11 runner-up, but District 11, as you know, is fantastic. District 11 is fantastic. They have the top 5 teams in the state. And, as you know, Nazareth is a perennial power. So, and they're ranked number 2 in the state this year. And so if they get back there past their preliminary match and face Wallenpaupack, it's going to be a tall task. Wallenpaupack's ranked 24th in the state. But, Wallenpaupack, we're going to see. We're going to see what Wallenpaupack could do. Like I said, they're strong from top to bottom, and I'm sure their kids will hang. Same with Honesdale. They're going up against Montoursville. They have to travel out to Montoursville. Montoursville's the number 4 team in the state. Honesdale is not ranked in the top 25 according to PA Power Wrestling. But again, that's, Honesdale's a team from top to bottom. I wouldn't be surprised to see them, keep that at least in the wins, to keep that close in the win category of the 13 weight classes themselves. So yeah, it's going to be interesting to see how District 2 does against these powers, and those matches are Tuesday night, and I'll be at Paupack.
All right, well, back to Wallenpaupack, Joe. You better find
like I said.
You better find some nice dining places up there.
Exactly. So yeah, and hopefully there'll be no snow squalls or something, but we'll see.
That's later on this week, Joe. I think you're clear.
Okay, excellent. Good. Good. So, all right. That wraps it up for wrestling. Joby, is there anything else high school that we need to touch on?
Well, we're just going to get real quick here because it's so hard to kind of get too in depth with swimming. But Delaware Valley boys and Abington boys are both still undefeated.
Yep.
That swimming meet is going to be coming up here, I believe, Thursday. Should be a dandy. It's at Delaware Valley. So you got to have a little bit of a travel there for the Abington Heights swimmers. But that is going to be a real test for both teams to figure out which one will be the Lackawanna League Boys Division champion. So I'm looking forward to that. I think that, Abington has some good individual talent this year. Jason Casper and Derek Williams, both having fantastic years. And, Abington Heights often carries a huge advantage in the diving. All 3 of their divers are really just terrific divers, led, of course, by Ethan Horitz, who is the defending champion in the district. So, this is going to be an interesting matchup to see which team will be the top team from the Lackawanna League. And the reason I bring it up only is that Tunkhannock has got a really good, solid boys team in Class 3A. So we'll see which one of those teams from the Lackawanna League could possibly challenge Tunkhannock when the swimmers get together on, believe it or not, Joe, high school basketball championship weekend. Swimming will also be held at neighboring Wilkes-Barre area high school. So that should be a pretty good thing. I'm looking forward to that. That swim meet is going to be a very good meet between Delaware Valley and Abington.
Absolutely, Joby. I also want to mention that I thought our colleague Scotty Walsh did a nice job with his Lady Royals coverage this weekend and their 40th anniversary of their national title in 1985. And, that's a team with a few locals on it, too, that's undefeated, one of the best teams in the nation. You got Casey Cranston, you got Kaylee Romanowski, and obviously a coach that we're very familiar with in Ben O'Brien, former Dunmore coach. So,
creating memories right before our eyes, Joe.
That's right, Joby. That's right. So we'll obviously be following that as well.
Joe, I think Casey Cranston is the player of the week again.
Yeah, you're right. You're right. Exactly. They're going to have to name it the Casey Cranston Award pretty soon.
Well, certainly for this year.
Exactly.
I know. I think she's won 5 times.
Exactly. So
only 8 weeks old?
Yeah. So it should be an interesting rest of the year here for the Lady Royals. I mean, they may
they can win it this year, Joe. They can.
Right? Absolutely. So, but other than that, Joby, I mean, we touched on the Luka trade. I know you don't really care that much about basketball, but well, NBA.
I'm more distracted, Joe, by the Super Bowl that's coming up.
Exactly. So let's talk about it.
Well, I first want to say this, Joe. I am going to have the all-region team. Their predictions are in, so that'll be publishing later on this week. So make sure you look forward to that. I think this is the 10th or 11th year in a row that we've done this with this all-region football team. I find it to be pretty fun. And I will tell you this, just a quick nugget here for you. Some of the all-region players this year did a great job of breaking down why they selected the team to win the Super Bowl. So I'm looking forward to publishing this. It's going to be a lot of fun.
Yeah, I love to read the comments on them. I think it's really interesting to see what these kids have to say. So I look forward to that as well. Joby, I honestly, I don't really know what to think of this game. It's just like, you look at the Eagles and, what Barkley brings, that offensive line, the defense led by, Dunmore native Vic Fangio. And, it's funny in the end. It's just like, but are you really going to say the Eagles are going to win this game against the Chiefs? Like, I don't know that I'm ready to do that at this point.
Well, Joe, one of the funny things is now, again, I've been watching the Super Bowl for a very long time, since I'm 9 years old. Okay. It's a holiday for me. Okay. It is a tension-filled game when the Rams are playing.
Yeah, of course.
Okay. And I can remember saying back it would be January of 1980, it was the 79th season, when the Rams played in the Super Bowl and lost to the Pittsburgh Steelers. I can remember saying, boy, I hope I have an opportunity to see the Rams in my lifetime win a Super Bowl championship. Now, back then, 1979, you kind of figure they're in the Super Bowl. They had just concluded the decade of the 70s where they had been to 4 or 5 NFC championship games, but only one Super Bowl.
Right.
And who could have ever imagined it would be 20 years before they get back to the Super Bowl? But I have been fortunate as a National Football League fan to have seen the Rams win 2 Super Bowls in my lifetime. So I'm very happy about that. Now,
yes.
I'm going to take off my fandom hat. I'm going to really kind of give you the lamest breakdown of how I think this game can be won by the Eagles.
I want to hear it.
And it really falls upon the shoulders of defensive coordinator Vic Fangio. I know he's got big, broad shoulders. The defense has to contain Mahomes in the pocket. Now, I know that seems a ridiculous premise because he's such a good passer.
Right.
Okay. But I think what makes Mahomes so dangerous is that he's such a great passer that anytime a play breaks down, he extends it. He's not Jalen Hurts where he's part of the running game. He is so aware of where defenders are on the field that he always manages to break off a 10, 11-yard run in a very key spot in a game. So I do think it comes down to Vic Fangio containing Mahomes in the pocket and then, of course, playing real good, solid defense behind that front four. That being said, Joe, I think it's going to be an entertaining game. It certainly was the first time these two teams played in the Super Bowl. I would argue the Eagles probably played better than the Chiefs for the majority of that Super Bowl.
Yeah, seriously.
But that being said, I think it's going to be an entertaining game. And really, Joe, that's all you can ask for if you're a fan. If you're not a fan of the Chiefs, you're not a fan of the Eagles, and you're just really wanting to watch a good quality football game, I think you're going to get that here on Sunday. And that's how I'm going to try to look at it, because clearly without the Rams being involved, I have no rooting interest.
Yeah, same for me, my friend. So, yeah, I'm with you. I just hope it's a good game, and we'll see how it turns out. I don't know. I don't know how to pick it. You know what? I'll go with
Go ahead, Joe. You got to pick it. Yep.
Eagles. We'll go 35-31 Eagles.
Now, Joe, the first Super Bowl when these two teams played, it was a high-scoring affair.
Yep.
I think coming off of the 2 championship games and knowing the reputation of Steve Spagnuolo and Vic Fangio, I think we're going to get somewhere in the neighborhood of possibly 27-24 with a late field goal to win it. And it's going to have to be a close one because Jake Elliott will not hit a deep one.
That's fair. That's fair. So you going Eagles?
I'm going to say the Eagles.
Wow. Jeez. United. Film Room Podcast united in saying the Eagles. We'll see what happens, Joby. I don't know. I just feel like the Chiefs have to lose at some point, but I don't know that they do. So we'll see. All right, that wraps it up for us here on the Film Room Podcast. I want to thank Jordan Shaffer again for joining us, our athlete of the week. Like I always say, be sure to follow along at the Times-Tribune.com/sports, our Instagram page, Times Tribune Sports Instagram page, Facebook page, Joby's Facebook page, Times Tribune Facebook page, Joby Fawcett, the Times Tribune. Follow along. We'll have all of our stuff on the websites and everything. And so follow along. We're getting close to, few weeks away from some hardcore playoff action, Joe.